Ngaramuteo, greetings to those in Rwanda. I think it's good evening. To those of us in the US, it's good afternoon. I'm glad here today. It's a special one. At One Nation Radio, we take pride in showcasing what Rwandans are doing across the globe and also in Rwanda. But once in a while, we take immense pride in also highlighting friends of Rwanda, because obviously as Rwandans, we love talking about our country. We love showcasing where's Rwanda headed and where Rwanda is as we speak. But it's always moving when you have someone who personally don't have maybe any vested interest in speaking highly of Rwanda, because they're not necessarily Rwandan, but they're Rwandan hearted, and we call them Inshuti z'u Rwanda, friends of Rwanda. Today on that matter, I think a lot of you in the Rwandan community came across a commencement speech where a gentleman really highlighted towards the latter part of his speech his journey with the Rwandan country, his journey with going back and forth to Rwanda for the last 10 plus years. And when we saw that, we really were all intrigued on how can we get a hold of this gentleman. Today, it's our lucky day. We got a hold of Mr. Scott Pyle, and we're going to have a conversation with him and trying to get to know him more on his personal journey, but as well his journey intertwining with the country of Rwanda. So with that, I have him on the line. I won't talk any much more, but we're all grateful for those following online at One Nation Radio. Thank you for always being an attentive audience. To those that are new, I hope that we're going to keep clicking on our One Nation Radio YouTube link. And if that's the first time you see us, hopefully it's not the last. With that, Mr. Pyle, I'll have you just give us a brief introduction of who you are. For those that haven't seen your commencement speech, give us some background of how this speech came about, how you thought about including Rwanda in your commencement speech. And yeah, I'll have some more questions, but just, yeah, brief introduction. Who is Mr. Scott Pyle? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kusa. I was born in Texas. Like many, my dad unfortunately left our family when I was 11 years old. So my mother raised me and my siblings. I played some sports along the way. I worked my way and paid my way through university by working at one time as many as 4 jobs. I remember I waited tables at night. I managed a health club during the day. On the weekends, I was working at a grocery store, and then I sold water treatment systems door to door. So whatever it took to pay the bills, you know. And I've been in the financial services industry almost from the moment I graduated university. So 30 years in the financial services industry, so everybody can figure out how old I am now. And I serve as senior advisor to the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation and Athletes in Action. We are global missions, global leadership. And I'm married to Dr. Pamela Pyle with 5 children and 8 grandchildren. And I recently received my doctorate from Indiana Wesleyan University. After giving the commencement speech, I said, wow, you guys really enjoyed the speech. You ended up giving me an honorary doctorate for that.
That's excellent. And speaking of that university, did you have any prior ties to the university, or how did you come about even being selected for this commencement speech?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, they're one of the most successful Christian universities in the United States, with a Wesleyan background, obviously. Through Museum of the Bible, Pamela and I are donors and partners with Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. And a gentleman, Dr. Jerry Pattengale, who's oversees the education curriculum through the museum, connected me to Indiana Wesleyan University. And it was an introduction. And so it was the first time I had even been on campus, and what a joy. And now they're part of my family. Yeah, now it's my alma mater, right?
Right on. Yeah, right on. So with that in mind, obviously, so glad to hear some of your background as well. I was curious, was looking at your very successful career in the financial industry. Can you give us some of the milestones you're proud of, at Pyle Financial Services? Give us a little background of how you left Wall Street to start your own, and also some milestones you're proud to share with the audience. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I served Wall Street through companies like Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley, the big wirehouse, big companies, and was a little frustrated with helping build companies who would ultimately, in my opinion, violate their culture and start to serve profits instead of serving the client and the families. I have a philosophy: if you take care of your employees take care of your clients, your team takes care of your clients, and then you don't have to worry about your profits. They take care of themselves. And so I founded Pyle Financial Services 7 years ago because of just the conflict I found. I wanted to serve the client, put the client first, and guard the culture of a company. And I found the only way I could do that was to own it. And so that was a huge milestone, just opening Pyle Financial Services. Another milestone, we just received our client. We're now in 27 states in the United States. We have clients across the country now. We just completed our 6th year of growth, and the company had grown at 500% over 6 years, and which is staggering. And it just shows what a great team we have at Pyle Financial. The company and our partnerships with our money managers is there's no other better that I know. And so for me, also understanding to be able to have a firm that aligns our clients' wealth with their purpose. And that's a big milestone, because in order to do that, you have to be committed to that. But also, the only way to serve and align your clients' wealth to their purpose is you have to know your client's purpose, and your client has to know their purpose. So we really drive down on the relationship.
Right on. So that's great that you're able to, like you said, have that alignment, because a lot of people have said that sometimes on Wall Street, obviously there's a very dynamic, I would say, critical mass of financially driven people, but sometimes people somewhat are soul searching as well, and they're not sure if they really have a purpose in obviously having a lot of resources made readily available, but at some point, a lot of people have said they're not even happy, or they don't feel fulfilled. So I'm glad you were able to make that pivot 7 years ago, and here we are. Now I'm gonna do speaking of pivot, a little shift. I was just curious, as some people know, and I know you do. There's a lot of misconceptions on the African continent, and misconceptions on Rwanda, the country you and I have close to our hearts. Can you share with us some of the misconception you often hear, maybe in your circles, in the community you live around, on the African continent, and then as well on Rwanda, some of the misconceptions you often hear?
Yeah, sure. It is amazing to me, the misconceptions. And I'll say one that I see often that's very disappointing is that many Westerners don't even understand Africa as a continent, not a country. It is so diverse, with so many nations, with so many cultures, and so much diversity, that it's looked upon by many, and some, I should say, for sure some, but seems like many, as a country, not a diverse continent with many nations. And so the diversity is not understood. The people and the culture doesn't seem to be understood. And then it seems also that people see Africa as a lot of poverty, and not the success and the cities and the wealth and the technology that I know comes from not just Africa, but Rwanda. I remember in 2009 when I came, and everyone was trading minutes for merchandise. And I was like, this is genius. This is genius. Who came up with this? This is a brilliant idea. And today, that is driving that technology. That's an African technology, is now driving the internet. And really what even leads to cryptocurrencies is that digital transaction. And so that's a great example of misconceptions, I think, of Africa. And a lot of Westerns, they see Africa and Rwanda through movies, right? All they know is through movies. And so, as you can imagine, many misconceptions come from movies.
Yeah, so thank you. I was gonna say, so now that we see a problem, and I know you as an entrepreneur, you're a problem solver. How do you change these preconceived ideas, and how do you think you can equip people with accurate information on the dynamic status of Africa and then on the dynamic status of Rwanda? Maybe if you can share some tips on how you equip people, how you direct them towards accurate information.
Yeah, I'll use a simple one. This last time I bought so many clothes in Rwanda, I couldn't fit them all in my bag coming back. And so just the style and the clothing is an example of watching Rwanda grow in industry beyond agriculture. Pamela and I do this often. We tell the story of Rwanda. We tell the story of Africa. We introduce people through Africa New Life Ministries, through the John Maxwell Foundation. We find storytelling is powerful. A dear friend of mine just wrote a book called Story Pathing, understanding your story and how to use it to move either yourself, your business, or others into what's true of them versus what misconceptions are. Even like the IWU, Indiana Wesleyan University commencement speech was a great idea. Anytime I'm given a platform because of my love first for Rwanda and then for Africa, I want to clear up those misconceptions. Even something as simple as recently I was a part of connecting many African nations to an African summit at Liberty University. Your ambassador to the United Nations was on a panel at that African summit and was able to speak on the economy, the industry, and the capability and technology growth of Rwanda before a very diverse group of businessmen and women in the United States. So those are just a few examples. I could go on and on.
And whenever you have such an opportunity, usually do you see the light bulbs turning on, or are people still in disbelief, like, nah, come on, I know you're maybe exaggerating? Or how are usually the first initial reaction of people when you give them a complete 180 degree of what they see of Africa or they see of Rwanda?
I think both, right? I think sometimes people are very surprised and intrigued, not surprised in a disrespectful way, but surprised in an encouraging way. Like, wow, I had no idea. And then often people are not only intrigued, but they become curious. And then that's when we invite them to come with us to Rwanda and join one of our teams, one of our leadership teams, one of our mission teams, one of our medical teams, and we bring people with us because my dear friend John Maxwell always says, you know, it's great to tell me, but why don't you show me? And so I do show and tell, not just tell and tell.
As you know, people believe in what they see, so I'm not surprised by that. And
yeah,
sometimes is it easy as well? Because I know, so my alma mater, I went to a Concord College in Moorhead, Minnesota, and there was a May seminar that took kids to Rwanda. And I remember all the time, some would tell me at first their parents were a bit reluctant. I mean, you know, they don't know much about Rwanda, and they're like, I don't want my kids to go. So how do you convince even sometimes family members or, you know, people that are seeing their beloved one traveling across the globe to a very exotic country? What are some of the ways of reassuring people, like from a human to human perspective?
Yeah, I think the easiest one is when I ask them, how safe would you feel walking down our city at night? And they kind of, well, not very safe. And I said, well, Rwanda is the fifth safest country in the world to walk down the street at night. The people of Rwanda, they have a heart, they're compassionate. I think what happened in 1994 is a brokenness, and then to transform and recover from what all humans are capable of if we turn on each other. So there is a strength, a humility, but a deep love that we find in the Rwandan people. And so, and these people trust me, right? So you're dealing with people you trust, and they see, and many times when you speak to people, it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it. And then they're watching you. They're watching your nonverbals. And if you're comfortable, and we've even taken our children with us on trips to Rwanda. And so it's again, practicing what we preach, assuring them of what's true of Rwanda, and the other countries that we've traveled to in Africa.
Right on. So speaking of traveling to Rwanda and to the African continent in general, let's talk a little bit about this transformative trip you've had, an overall transformative journey of going to Rwanda again and again. Can you share with us the memorable first trip you had to Rwanda? What prompted this trip, and why have you been going back again and again?
Yeah, I would say Pamela, my wife, came in 2009 and had an amazing trip, and actually heard God tell her, this is your place and this is your purpose, and gave her a vision to build a clinic. And she came home and told me all about that. And I'm like, sure, honey, I'll help. And sure, why not? And I'm thinking a little clinic. But then she wanted me to go. And I'm like, no, I'll just write a check. You go, I'm okay. And it was interesting because I came as a favor to my wife the first time. Almost like, okay, I'm going to check the box and then she'll leave me alone, right? Husbands, you know what I'm saying when I say that. And God broke my heart along with the people of Rwanda in a transformative process of seeing a country through, I call your three great aims: dream big, unite, come together, no more Hutu, Tutsi, Twa, but Rwandan, and then accountability, and to celebrate. And so I saw this DNA, if you will, of a country who is rebuilding. And there's nothing more exciting in this world but to be a part of a people, a village, and a country who's not only changing for themselves, but ultimately Rwanda is a light for the world to change and transform, forgive, not forget, and move on. And so that was compelling. I mean, how can you not want to be a part of? And so much so that African New Life, over the years we've been there, that organization has brought $80 million from Western money into Rwanda. I even, with some others, we started a company called Umabano, right? Umabano, good company. And one of our subsidiaries is Love Avocado, where we aggregate farmers' crops to pay them well, keep the quality high, and then export them to Dubai and Kenya and other places so far. But the main goal of Umabano is job creation, community impact, supply chain fairness, and a reasonable return on money.
Wow, that's it's when you know even the meaning of Umubano, it's really people together, togetherness. Yeah. So and I really love the whole job creation, because as you know, in Rwanda, there's a word a lot of people use it as a pillar in day-to-day life. It's agachiro, dignity.
Dignity. Yes.
What's more dignifying than giving someone a way to earn their life, and a way as well to feel more at the command of their own destiny. So I really commend your efforts in how to empower people.
That was the first Rwandan word I learned, agachiro.
Oh, right on.
Yes.
And I was just curious, as you're saying this, and it's always great to know that you see Rwanda not only for its own people, its own diaspora, but also for humanity in general as a light, as a testimony that it is possible. Can you reflect a little bit on, we just went through a year of COVID, we went through a year of some countries being going through a lot of turmoil, and what are some of the lessons you think the US, maybe where we call it home right now, that could learn from humble Rwanda, like in how to come together when people feel so disunited, how to have that resilience muscle when a lot of people feel like they're back against the wall. If there's a couple nuggets of wisdom you can share of what you've gathered from Rwanda.
Yeah, and I would say that as you started talking, unfortunately, the landscape company showed up and the mower started loud, so I had to move rooms. Can you say that question again?
Oh, not a problem. I was just saying, it's very moving to hear you say on how Rwanda is not only an example to its own people and to its diaspora around the globe, but as well could be a light for humanity. And I was just wondering if you could, we just went through a year of COVID, a year of different countries going through turmoil, civil unrest. Even here in the US was quite a hectic year. I was wondering, what are some of the nuggets of wisdom maybe you've gathered from Rwanda, of the resilience, of, like you said, unity despite really people going through a tragic event. What are some of the nuggets of wisdom you've gathered in Rwanda that you think other people should pay more attention to, and that could be applicable in other societies like the one we live in here in the US?
Yeah, it's real interesting, and it's such a great question, because I think when you're inside of something, I think when you're a part of something and have gone through what the country, the people of Rwanda went through, it's easy and it's necessary to turn inward and deal with the issue. But I think what's hard is I don't think Rwandans appreciate what an example you are for the world, what an inspiration you are for the world. Our country right now has a hard time forgiving each other for a Facebook post. And yet in 1994, we know what happened in the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi, and what came from that was leadership that said, while we cannot forget, we cannot remain there. And society has so many pains where we've done each other wrong. We're broken people. We've done each other wrong. In our country, we say we were formed to form a more perfect union. But yet people look back on our history and say, well, you weren't perfect. Well, that's right. Exactly. We weren't perfect. We're trying to form a more perfect union. Rwanda is an example of where we all as humans are capable of turning on each other and going. If we blame someone else for our problems long enough, eventually there will be a conflict. But what you have, and think about this was just 27 years ago. This isn't like we're talking 400 years, or this is 27. And to see Rwanda as the second fastest growing economy on the continent of Africa, the fifth safest country to walk down the street at night. And because of what y'all do every third Saturday, one of the cleanest countries on the planet, that is a major success story. And so as an American, as a Texan, which is even more proud than American, to look at your country and say, you are an example for me, you're an example for my people, for my country, and you're us, you are our brothers and sisters on this planet. And thank you for giving us the example that you have lived. And I'm sorry y'all had to go through the pain for all of us.
Thank you, and you really you encapsulate it pretty well, and it's always refreshing sometimes because, as you know, when you're kind of in it, sometimes you don't even take a moment to step back and say, "Wow, like this is actually," because I know oftentimes I've had people like yourself that are gracious enough to remind us, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, that is true," because we don't take it for granted. Don't get me wrong, but it's just sometimes. I mean, like they say, the fish in the water doesn't know the temperature of the water because it's water. So
that's right.
We appreciate such reminders. Speaking of the scope of work, African New Life Ministries have been doing. Can you tell us more on that scope of work in Rwanda, and how can people following us get involved? Is there any social media platform to follow? I mean, if you can give us a quick overview of the work you do and how Rwandans following, anyone following right now our show, how can they get more involved?
Yeah, so African New Life Ministry believes every child has the right to dream. And we do this through education, faith, and healthcare. African New Life operates the Dream Medical Center, which is in the Kicukiro district in Kigali. Opened in 2018 and started seeing patients January of 2020, and has seen over 53,000 patients, have delivered over 660 babies in that hospital. So we believe in the two hands of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we share his compassionate acts of service and his gospel message. If we're hungry, we need to eat. If we're sick, we need healthcare. If we don't have a chance for education, we need education. If we don't have a uniform, we need a school uniform. We need books, right? The things that a child needs to dream and have hope. Because if the children have hope, they bring hope into the household, and the whole household transforms and changes. And so we are in over 8 villages across the country. And you can go to africanewlife.org. So it's africanewlife.org, and view all the ways to join us and donate. There's so many ways to get involved.
That's amazing. And I was just wondering, as a proud father of 5 and then a grandpa of, I think you said 8, if I'm correct.
Yes.
How do you then also instill in your kids and grandkids on that sense of, hey, I know you live in perhaps comfortable or more well off South Carolina, United States, but hey, there's a bigger picture to humanity. And for instance, there's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, a country where mom and dad are giving and giving again. So how do you instill in your kids that sense of, hey, you need to have a bigger picture approach to life? It's not just what's happening in my backyard, in my immediate vicinity. How does that transpire?
I think first, just like we do with so many in the West, we have a child sponsorship program for roughly $40 a month. You get to come to know a child, and you write letters and you participate with this child who's thriving in Rwanda and is in education. So you can become very personal. Each of our children know some of Rwandan children as brothers and sisters. It's been part of our DNA for 11 years. And fortunately, our children have had the privilege of going to Christian schools and being around organizations that look beyond ourselves. And I believe so many Americans have a posture as if they think they deserve to have been born in America. And they don't look past themselves. They don't look past our country. And while we are apparently the most charitable country on the planet, I think there's a difference between sending a check and going and getting involved in the lives of the people, because Agachiro is so important. People want opportunity, not a handout. And that's what's so great about your leadership, is they understand dignity in Agachiro. And for our grandchildren as well, and even their schools, because of my wife. If you're near my wife, you're going to hear of Rwanda. She keeps trying to get her citizenship soon. So we're working with, we both want to have our dual citizenship. And it's just who we are. So it comes out.
I hope as you get your citizenship, hopefully very soon, we pray for that. You're gonna also have a Rwanda name. If you maybe already have one, I'm not sure, but that's part of the whole tradition. If you get the passport, there's a name.
That's right. I can't wait.
So with that in mind, and it's great that you spoke about, what a great surprise that you're Texan. So you're gonna connect with this next question. So one of the values in Rwanda is gukunda igihugu, patriotism. So like to really think of your country, even sometimes beyond your own self. And it's an ingrained Rwandan value. And however, when we see stellar people like yourself that are showing love for Rwanda, we're moved because, again, you have no vested interest in liking this country, because not only you have your own country, the United States of America, but you have your own home state, which is it's almost like a country within a country.
That's right.
Of Texas, and there's a lot of Rwandans actually in Texas, so it's always a good state we know in Rwanda. But of all the countries around the globe, my very simple question is, why Rwanda? Like, how come so much love you're showing to Rwanda when you have other places you can direct that type of love?
Yeah, it's the people. It's the people. And if for anyone that didn't get to hear the speech, I hope they listen. Because many times you talk about what makes a nation great. I mean, what does? I mean, we talk about, is it the politics? Is it the leaders? Is it the government? Is it the economy? Is it the natural resources? It's the people. And I said it earlier, but the transformation since 1994 and the overwhelming potential of a landlocked country, I believe God has put his hand on Rwanda and is lifting Rwanda up, not only to be the example to Africa, but to be a light to the world. And it's so compelling. And that is what we see every time we come, every time we talk about it, and every time we leave.
It's amazing that you say this, because in Kinyarwanda we have a saying, Imana yirwa handi igataha Rwanda. So in a very Rwandocentric way, we say that God wanders the world during the day and at night comes home to Rwanda. So you can imagine, in a way, God's country. So I love when you said that God's put his own hands in having Rwanda come forward. But I was just curious, if I don't know, as an American, if you follow this a little bit, but as Rwandans, every time when we commemorate in April and all the way to July 4th, there's always denials, people that are having an alternative narrative, or even are full-blown denying. And it's always interesting because we tend to connect with other people that maybe has a tragic history like ours of going through a genocide, like the Jewish community, the Armenian community, and we're always comparing notes on, hey, how do you, because I mean, Armenians is 100 years now, and some more years, and Jewish is 60 plus, yet people are still denying or having a revisionist approach to actual what happened. So I was wondering, you in your kind of, as an ally, I will see you as an ally. How do you navigate this if you're in a room and someone has an alternative facts about Rwanda, or if you come across some literature or someone having a remark about, oh, Rwanda, and they have an alternative way of approaching it? What's your reaction? Because I know as Rwandans, sometimes it hits home that it's hard to be in a room or to be exposed to such narrative. But you as an ally in Shuti, Rwanda, a friend of Rwanda, how do you navigate this?
Yeah, it's it's very upsetting, isn't it, when someone will deny what appears, let's just take for a moment and say what appears to be a logical conclusion that something happened. Okay. And so this is why history is so important for all of us, that we protect history and we keep it in the records, because we don't want to repeat bad history. And so by acknowledging the past, it protects the truth and the future. And so it seems to me, when people want to deny history, if they're willing to have a rational conversation, and that's a big question, if they're willing to have a rational conversation, I want to press in on how did they get there? What is their source? And then if I was in Rwanda, I would invite them out to one of the genocide memorials outside of Kigali. The church on the way out to the new airport. I can't remember the name of the church. And the other part is, if anyone wants to say the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi in 1994 didn't happen, they need to sit down with our president, Bill Clinton. He was president in 1994. And when asked, what is your greatest regret, President Clinton? His answer is he regrets not stopping the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi in Rwanda. When the United Nations pulled out, President Clinton could have stopped that. And so if it's not a historical fact, why would the leader of the free world say that was his greatest regret? And so those are examples of protecting the truth, having multiple sources of information. And we should all guard our heart and guard ourselves as what is our motive to try to revise history? What is our motive, or what is the motive of the person who's trying to revise history? It's very important, because it is, while I get to come and visit and God roams the world and stays there at night, it is your country. This is your future. And to say that it didn't happen and to side with people that have some motive for saying this, I would be cautious, and then do more investigation. And because, again, we know it happened, and we're Americans, and it is an unfortunate part of history, but we'll never forget.
And as you know, it's interesting when you're saying to almost do your own research and seek truth. But as you know, we live in the era of anyone can kind of open a YouTube account and then start preaching a reality, if I may say. Sometimes when people throw loosely the word fake news of, do we know what's accurate anymore? So in amidst all this abundance of information, do you have as well, you as a person who's been to Rwanda, you who grew up in the US, how do you filter what is accurate from not accurate? What is a trustworthy source? Mm-hmm. What isn't? I mean, it come across as a simple question, but you know the world we live in right now, where anyone can pop up on YouTube and say, I know what's going on. So
absolutely. I have a saying that time roots out all truth. And so sometimes we have to be patient in our decision to discern truth. If we're confused or if we're not sure, we have to look at the behaviors of the source. We have to look at the motives of the source, and we have to look at the longevity of the source. As a partner of Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., we have built a protection on the historicity of the book called the Bible. Now, we're not protecting Christianity or Muslim or Jewish. We're protecting the book and its lineage. It's the most documented, scientifically proven, archaeologically sound text on the planet. And so I use that as an example when someone in today's age, because really we have too much information and too much opinion. And so it drives us to have more personal responsibility and self-control to do firsthand research. This was only 27 years ago in Rwanda. Maybe next time you walk near a Rwandan who has a cut across their face, ask them politely, I'm sorry, but can you tell me, do you mind telling me what happened? When you see someone who says they're a survivor or a perpetrator, get firsthand information. This is something simple, I think, in Rwanda, but a greater problem in the world, because depending on your faith, we know there is an enemy that wants to confuse, steal, and kill. And confusion is their number one tool to divide us. And let's not divide, let's unite.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. And it's always, I always appreciate when people share their own tips, because to each their own, right? And if that works for people, it's always good, because sometimes people, when it comes from someone that maybe looks like them or has shared the same upbringing, they're like, oh my God, if that's working for him or her, that could work for me. So thank you for sharing. Moving on to, again, you being in Nshuti Rwanda, so a friend of Rwanda, I was just wondering, is there maybe a network of now over the 10 last years, you and your better half, Dr. Pamela, of maybe friends now that are now also part of this Friends of Rwanda group? And how do you make sure you can nurture that circle of people that enjoy Rwanda, people that have been to Rwanda over those last 10 years with you? And how do you make sure as well, South Carolinians, I don't know if that's how you say it.
That's it.
More aware of your home, away from home, Rwanda.
Yeah. So network, I mentioned some of them, John Maxwell and the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation. We are coming to Rwanda with education curriculum and leadership curriculum. We have donors, partners, sponsors, staff, medical teams, mission teams, and Friends of Africa New Life Ministries, who's headquartered in Rwanda at the Dream Center. We have the College of Theology and churches across the world that work with the College of Theology there at the Dream Center. And we have friends like Dale Dawson with Bridge to Rwanda, Rwanda's ambassador to the United States, and many, many Rwandans. Sandy Nasura, who I think of at the Gorilla Hotels, and his family. And we are so blessed in relationships, and we continue to grow those relationships, and we use our social media as well. And as I said earlier, if you're standing near my wife at any event, you'll probably be buying a plane ticket to Rwanda. I mean, we talk about the gorilla tour and the gorillas and the beautiful resources and that are being cared for by the Rwandan government through tourism. Rwandan tourism is fantastic. So we could go on and on. That would be a whole nother hour if we sat and talked about CUSA, all the ways we connect and love and build into our brothers and sisters in Rwanda.
So thank you very much. As we enter now, sadly, as you know, time goes by so fast when you have a fruitful conversation like ours. So as we're entering the concluding part of this conversation, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, so as you know, demographically speaking, the African continent has now a majority of people that can identify as youth. Is it under the age of 20? Is it under the age of 30? I mean, the numbers are just significant. In Rwanda, it's the same. Rwanda is not an island on the African continent. Rwanda is the same. It's a very, demographically speaking, young country. And so what do you think is the role of the youth and the generations as well, born after 1994, in picking up the baton in this noble fight against, obviously, genocide deniers, but as well in sharing this inspiring, transformative journey of Rwanda?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at the world over its history. The old depend on the young for many reasons. For care, the old acquire wealth over time and then need someone to sell it to liquidate in their retirement years. And so there's so many things we could speak about, from economics, how important it is for the young to carry the baton on creating work, finding work, being almost a loud, triumphant voice about build the economy, build technology, and let's lead, and not, and your country and His Excellency President Paul Kagame is just, his voice around the world. People see Rwanda as a leader, not a follower. And so economically, I say, carrying the baton of protecting history and understanding that the genocide was a moment in time, and in individuals' lives, sometimes as a people, humans, we need to come to our bottom. We need to find our brokenness before we can really bloom. I know in my own life, it seems like I learn more. Very important that they see themselves as the leaders of the future, and how important it is that the elder community needs them to pick up the baton, take the baton, and run with it and make it theirs. Make it theirs.
One of the things we've seen as well is, speaking of the youth, I myself came 10 years ago in the US to pursue higher education. And I was just wondering, how would you, so it's funny you mentioned Mr. Dave Dawson with Bridge to Rwanda, and you know the mission of Bridge to Rwanda. You, as someone who obviously goes back and forth and sees how dynamic the country is, what as well would be, you think, your message to Rwandans living in the US, Rwandans as well living around the globe, on the importance of adding a stone to the monument that Rwanda successful journey is, but as well to the youth, saying, hey, this transformation is also part of your journey, and so yeah, if on behalf of Mr. Dale Dawson as well, what kind of message you could tell to basically, in a way, to say, hey, maybe not go back home permanently, but you should at least consider, making some back and forth and adding a stone to this monument that Rwanda's journey is.
Yeah, and you and I both know how hard it is to get student visas and work visas around the world. And so I would think it was a privilege and an exception to be able to go and educate, and then be in other countries, and possibly they married. But what an opportunity! Like Pamela and I mean, Pamela says she's Rwandan. Now she's Cherokee Indian. She's American Indian, but I keep telling her, honey, you're not Rwandan, but by proximity, yes, they'll probably let you be Rwandan. And but for us, we see it as a great investment in not just the country of Rwanda, but in the kingdom of God. And if you believe there is a shining city on the hill that should not hide its light, why would you not want to go back and add to the foundation and put a stone in the foundation and be a part of what you can't deny that God has his hand on Rwanda. You can't deny it. There is no way you would have achieved what's achieved over the last 27 years. So what a privilege for not just those of us who are not Rwandan to come add as you say, put a stone in the foundation of this beautiful transformation. But for Rwandans around the globe if you can't visit, join Africa New Life, join organizations, join Bridge to Rwanda, sponsor, pay for another student to get a visa and come get educated and go back home. Bridge to Rwanda is to educate to do higher education, to bring back that knowledge to the country of Rwanda. So I would encourage them, join us, Mzungu. If you can't do it on your own, join us and come and love on Rwandans, or do something on your own and make a mark back on your own country.
I hope by now you've seen the T-shirt that says, "My name is not Mzungu."
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It is just, I remember the first time. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So my name is not Mzungu, but I will answer.
Exactly. So it's been such an honor and a pleasure, and it's amazing to see that it's already the last question. But that's what happened when you have a fruitful conversation and two people talk about things they're very passionate about. And in our case, it's Rwanda. So my final question would be, what final message do you want our attentive audience to take away to conclude this fruitful conversation on the importance of sharing the transformative journey of Rwanda with the globe? And when is your next trip to Rwanda? So 2 questions.
Yeah. So the first, I want to say, democracy is a precious jewel, and it's fragile. And you have to fight to keep democracy. You have to fight for your leaders who are open, and you have a democratic government again. And so this is so important that you get involved and that you understand you're the bearers, you're the carriers of this precious thing called democracy. And trust me, I'm living in a country right now that is some serious concerns around our democracy. And so I say first that guard your democracy and cherish it. And then I think that was the first question. And then the second one is when. Pamela and I are working on dates right now. We have about 6 other couples that have never been to Rwanda. They are business leaders. They are very successful people in the U.S., very influential. And we are bringing them probably in September or October. And we will visit our villages, visit the Dream Medical Center, stay at the Marriott there in town, which I love the buffet. Love the buffet at the Marriott. There's an advertisement for you, advertisement for the Marriott, so you can pay. And then we will, Lord willing, see some of your government leaders, and then hopefully be able to go tour with the gorillas. That is one of the most amazing experiences I've ever done in my life. So,
all right, Anna. It's interesting when you mentioned touring. That was going to be also my exit question. Was hopefully when you go to Rwanda, obviously you do what brings you there, which is the some of the work you do. But as well, I hope you've taken some time to see the beauty that Rwanda has to offer. Anything from the Akagera Park on the eastern part, or the Virunga in the north, but as well Nyungwe in the south. And as well, I really have a really attachment to the Kivu Lake, the shore of the Kivu Lake.
Yeah,
so beautiful.
Kivu Lake, beautiful.
I hope you always take time as well to pause and enjoy as well what Rwanda has to offer. And do you have any favorite? Because Rwanda has a lot of coffee to offer. Do you have any favorite coffee? Maybe a coffee shop you go to when you're in Kigali, or even just coffee as its own brand that you really enjoy?
I'm trying to think what my favorite coffee would be. I always go to I know we always go to the one downtown, and the name eludes me right now, right there in the center of town in Kigali.
Did bourbon coffee?
Bourbon. Yes, that's it. Bourbon.
That's a nice one.
Always
That's a really
bourbon
nice one.
coffee. Yes, that's
And
a
that's
nice
one of our staples. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well,
love your coffee. Rwandan coffee is amazing, and we normally try to give most of our stuff away while we're there. And we've come back with over 150 pounds of coffee in our and in the U.S. Customs, they tend to check us out because they're not sure what all we have.
I was gonna say, you know, when you have to declare if you're bringing, you know, this and merchandise, like, you know, you have over 100 pounds of coffee. So, Mr. Scott Pyle, it's been a true pleasure and honor. We really, on behalf of the Rwandan youth, Rwandan community, and also the One Nation Radio, commend you and your honorable wife, Dr. Pamela, for the work you're doing, selfless work. And as you know, we say what we as Rwandans cannot give you back, God will. Imana y'u Rwanda, so God, the God of Rwanda. But as well, really knowing that we believe in what we see, and we believe in people that are action driven, and what we see with what you're doing from yourself is really inspiring. And I think the youth, it's also empowering, because you're like, if they can do it, they have 2 arms, 2 legs, just like me, that could be me one day. So, and also to your friends that you're bringing back to Rwanda, I'm pretty sure them, it's, I hope, an inspiring experience. And I really hope that they get to see that Rwanda is more than just a movie or a tagline or just a news glimpse. They see it's a journey, it's a people, and it's also a story of resilience and a story of a dignified people. So with that, I really hope that our paths will cross, hopefully in Rwanda or somewhere in the US. As you know, pre-COVID, we used to have what's called Rwanda Day, when our leadership and with His Excellency, they would come and just give us a pulse of what's happening on the ground and telling us on how, hey, there's a country waiting for you and should come. So I hope that one day I might see you as one of the Rwanda Days in the US. But other than that, on behalf of the Rwandans living in the US, Shakubashimira cyane, to thank you very much, and wish you imigisha, so blessings, and Imana y'u Rwanda ikomeze kubarinda, to protect you. And it's been an honor. This is Kyusantwari, mobilizer of the USRCA, and your faithful radio host at One Nation Radio. And until the next time, stay healthy, and hopefully pretty soon everyone's going to be able to hug each other when we're all vaccine and healthy and COVID is way behind us. But in the meantime, I hope we all play our part, because it's a team effort in I think overcoming what we're all going through right now. But I'm very hopeful. So murakoze cyane.